Recording and recording. Okie doke. So yeah, I was saying Mariah, she checked in the last hour,
Okay.
and she's just overwhelmed right now. And she wondered about um, being more involved in the summer than
Hmm.
now, um, so that so you know, I mean, I suppose that's fine with everybody. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, as long as we can get a quorum.
Yeah, right. Uh, and yeah, well, it was either that, and or she said perhaps she should leave, just bow out and open up the space for someone else. So there were two options she offered. Um,
I think we should give her a chance, and she
yeah,
just had to get it fit into her schedule, her life.
yeah, no, I agree. Unless anybody objects, I mean, I think she's offering. She's a volunteer,
Hmm.
and okay, so we just started that. Mariah, she's a new member. Uh, she just joined up, I guess, in the last few months. Yeah, well, she hasn't made it until recently, so she hasn't been on. Anyway, 7:10 meeting started,
Okay.
and okay, let's look at the just quickly the agenda. Uh, let's go straight to the guide board,
Yeah.
and as I mentioned, I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but I had a word with Peter Mahoney at WAC, the Williamstown folks,
Uh-huh.
and he's open to pretty much any of the options that we've seen so far, um, and of course we talked about the least cost option, which is let me just put that up here. Uh,
Henry, did he say why it didn't appear in the last letter?
well, he did actually. He thought we were perhaps not interested in that one. I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
why,
Yeah.
but that was sort of what he said. He figured we were more interested in doing the earlier version of it with the flat roof, or something more. Yeah, uh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Let me share with you. Okay, there. Yeah. So that's what it. That's the. This is the one that is pricey. Uh, Either with a rubber piece there on the top, you know, instead of a peak. Uh, and the other one is okay.
I thought this was the less expensive one.
No, actually, this
Oh.
is
Okay.
Oh.
not.
Yeah, I thought this was the one that we had chosen as well, because that was
Oh.
the only drawing that I saw in the email.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is that let me see if I can get the other one up here. Uh, now why am I not seeing that? It's not scrolling now. Christ. Okay. Yeah, this is the 1911 style, which is more expensive than the.
Huh.
Oh man, what is going on? Let me try another. Ah, why is this not scrolling? Ah, Erin is here. Okay.
Good.
Well, we'll have to rely on our. Hello, Erin.
Hi.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
No, no worries. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we were just looking at options for the roof of the guide board, the signpost at the common.
Cool.
Yep. Um, and we've been looking at this one. This is a more expensive one. I think the rubber roof here it goes for about 9,000. And then of course they gave us also options in copper, which go up to 11,000. The cheaper of all these options is the what's referred to as there's just a slightly sloping shingle to the peak kind of roof. So if you can imagine this, peaking uh, with shingles. Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Thanks for the recap.
they sent me this, but I can't seem to scroll to get it for some reason.
That's the only one that I saw in the stuff
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
got.
Well, in the original, let me just. This is very strange because I I could swear he included that. No, because there were two of them. He sent me two sketches. I asked for two.
Really?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep. I just uh, yes. Uh, uh,
I wish there was some way they could do this one with just shingles because it is a lot closer to those photos.
yeah.
I thought this was the one we were talking about because it was the only picture I saw.
no.
Right. Me
Let
too.
me. Yeah. Give me a second here.
Okay.
I can't see it now. What happened? It's strange. All right. Let's just. Uh, yeah. No. That is,
I'm sorry to
yep.
just wonder what's our reference point for these? Like, are we looking to get like I have the photo Mateo shared from 1911 in an email. Is that the reference point that we're sort of prioritizing, or is there
The-
another one?
yeah. Yeah. No. No. The confusion is that we were going back and forth on a flat roof, as you just saw. Now, I think you're seeing now. Yes,
Yeah.
that flat roof, and the one I'm going to show you now. Let's see if I can. Mhm. All right. Yeah, I guess they were separate. They were separate. They were separate documents. I will give you this one. Here we go. Okay. Voila.
Ah. Oh,
That is the cheapest version of the roof with shingles. This one, yeah, it's basically a very slight slope with shingles that does not have the second um, uh, piece of roofing. You know that you know have been on there since the 70s maybe, and
And is there like a historical reference that we're looking to,
right.
or are we just deciding on the point of price?
Well, the as far as I know, the roof has never looked like this before. Um, at least, do we have a record of a roof looking like this?
No, I've never seen that before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what they offered for. I guess it was 5,400, something like that.
okay.
And the reason for the higher cost on the flat
680.
roof is that he needs to send it out to another specialist to do it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I assume from our last conversation that um, that even if we wanted to uh, 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 compensate, let's say, for the difference in
Uh-huh.
price, right? 5,000 to, let's say, I guess it's 9. Let me just double check that. Hold on 1 second.
One is 5686,
Mhm.
and then retaining cupola is 7468, but then there's other things too. Then there's that 9240. I'm not sure. Seems like there's 4 different ones, right? I'm a little confused.
Right. Let me put that up. Let me just share that 1 second. Well, just for the of interest to the folks who've not seen this, let me just show
Yeah.
you we received 2 proposals from them. This is the Williamstown Atlanta Conservation Center. So let's show you the first proposal looked like this, and we had, and I've marked in yellow. This is the sloping roof, right? That I just showed you, right?
Okay.
How much is that?
That is 5,686. So this was the initial. They sent this out back in January, February. The alternative back then was to look at the to keep the cupola, what they call the cupola here, retaining cupola.
Yep.
Second roof, right? That little piece on top of it, which was added, right, in the 70s. So there's that was the first interaction, the first proposal. The second proposal, the second proposal did not include the lowest cost option, and so it include. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's you got the with the
Oh.
cupola, and shingles. Right, that's 7.5 grand approximately.
Okay.
Option B, they've got no cupola, it's a flat roof, more or less, yeah, and rubber for that flat portion. That's 8,344. And of course, the price goes up as we go into copper. And I think we agreed that, I believe we agreed that the copper is it's a hazard for anybody who wants to steal it and sell it. So
Yeah.
those are out the question. The remaining options, yeah, are the ones that I've showed you, except that in this proposal we don't see the least cost one, which is $5,400 odd. A simple sloping roof. No, I gather from our last conversation that it's not possible to supplement from our budget for the difference here. If we wanted to go to a more expensive version, I don't believe we can, because we've submitted a proposal for a particular budget. Am I correct in that? I guess.
Unless we're prepared to pay the full cost ourselves, but if we're expecting part of the money to come from a CPA grant from town meeting,
Yeah,
then that's, we've asked town meeting for what we've asked for.
exactly. So we're kind of locked in.
Okay.
Well, we're locked in if we want to do it this year.
We're locked in for this year, but yeah, I mean, this, uh, yeah. How practical is it to wait on it? Given they may not. Well, first of all, I guess we'd have to figure out if they would hold on to it that long.
You'd probably end up paying storage fees
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm.
for them. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I could inquire. I didn't ask them about that. It just didn't occur to me. I mean, that is a possibility. I mean,
So it kind of, okay, can I summarize what I think I'm hearing from
yeah,
Sure.
everyone to make sure I understand?
that's Aaron. Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds like we asked for a certain amount of money from town meeting to cover the restoration work. Several of the options presented here are beyond the budget request that we made. One of the options, it sounds like, would fit within the budget request that we made. And
Yep.
the question is, do we want to move forward with that budget option, or do we not want to do that for some
Correct.
reason?
And somebody suggested waiting for the next round of CPA money.
Well, we wouldn't have to wait until next year. We can do an off-cycle application. The
Mhm.
problem is the CPC doesn't give that money out. It's up to town meeting. So we
Got
would have to ask for or
Yeah.
expect a special town meeting unless we're willing to wait until next spring for annual town meeting to come around again.
Okay. By the same token, can we and the town live with a version that is just a sloping shingled roof? This is um,
I don't know. Leslie, what do you think, being long involved in the historical commission in town and stuff like that?
what do I think in terms of which option I would
Yeah,
prefer?
of the option that we apparently chose, which has just a sloping roof, no little flat section on top like the 1911, and no cupola like the more recent stuff.
Okay. Well, my first comment would be that I came from the finance committee to join the historical commission, and they're talking about a special town meeting probably being needed at some point. So it probably would not be a full year, but still,
Ah,
it would be nice to get it back in on the common. And
yeah.
cost is important, but also if one option, the one with the rubber membrane, if that is more durable for long term,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm not following it 100%,
Mhm.
whether the rubber membrane
Mhm.
was in the least expensive, middle, or most expensive.
Well, no, actually, let me just point out the price for that. It's $3,000 more expensive than the simple sloping shingled roof.
Yeah. So it is significantly more.
Hmm. And I did a bit of research on it. The rubber, of course, is impermeable and very stable, but it is also susceptible to heat. Um,
Mm.
yeah, it's black.
Really?
Yeah,
Sunshine right on it, huh?
yeah.
I don't understand why they can't shingle that flat piece.
Yeah.
Why it needs to be either copper or rubber. It seems to me like they could just continue the shingles. I know that's not exactly what the photos appear to show, a solid
Yep,
uh, toned object, whatever the top piece is, but
yep.
Well, the option B, no cupola, but with the rubber, it does say fasten shingles to roof using stainless steel nails.
yeah, I assume that was the part of the roof underneath the flat piece that's at the center.
Oh,
Yeah,
But I don't
possibly.
know why they wouldn't consider continuing those shingles into that centerpiece.
Have a
hmm.
flat shingled portion. Yeah. Um, yeah, we do have some time here. I no, I think I would like to consult Smolsky, Steve Smolsky, the uh, the wood scientist.
Uh-huh.
Um, about the option. Actually, Mateo's idea about having it fully shingled but flat. That's an option that we could run by Steve, and also ask him about the durability of this rubber roof.
Yeah.
You know, um, and yeah, as far as the Massachusetts preservation requirements, um, I wonder. I mean, yeah, we're trying to reproduce some version of it, but it's gone through quite dramatic changes, right? An extra cupola instead of a flat roof, which never existed before. Um, and well, I could also ask Steve if a sloping shingled roof is more impermeable to water than any of the other options. I mean,
Yeah.
it may come down to the science here.
Yeah.
you know, a flat shingle may not work. That's something I would ask him. So
I
how
think
much time do we have to get this thing sort of
yeah.
squared away? Given that town meeting is the end of May.
If it's on the warrant, then you can always just pass at town meeting and say we're not ready.
Yeah.
Got it. Yep. Okay.
Oh,
So
So
and
May
they haven't.
31st.
The select board has not set the warrant yet, so we could also, send a letter to the CPC asking the select board to withdraw that particular article. Um,
Okay. Well,
and
we're not
and,
gonna.
and I would add, like, if it is a financial concern about the a few $1,000s difference between what we've
Mhm.
put in and the option to go for the flat piece on top. Um, I can't guarantee that the CPC is going to approve a particular amount, but
Mhm.
we'll have almost $33,000 in historic preservation funding for the new fiscal year. So an additional $2,000 is something that we could write into that grant.
Mhm.
What kind of projects do we usually spend historical commission funding on?
We have spent it. Are you talking about the CPA funding? Or are you talking about the historical commission itself?
Uh, Forgive me for my ignorance of what the specifics. I'm just trying to sort of get up to speed with what the budget is, and when I usually think about should we spend money on this, I think what are the competing things I want to spend money on. So
Well,
does that help?
yeah. At the moment, this has been a priority. In terms of amount, uh, and also quite a bit of money. But there's the archival project that's in the wings, and we've also contributed to, well, indirectly, right? To I believe we contributed to the cemetery,
Yep.
and
Those are
uh,
contributing ones right now. In the past, we've repaired sills on the schoolhouse. We've assisted with repairs to the Hearst house.
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
Okay, so it's as things come up, there aren't like regular expenses that we need to pay for or
No,
anything like that, but
All right.
no,
And,
no,
thanks. I'm
and,
sorry to be such a dunce.
No,
no,
no.
no,
just to
no.
clarify, we also have um, the Community Preservation Act funding through the CPC. There's a dedicated pot of money for historic resources,
Mhm.
which tends to be used either by us or the Cemetery Commission. The Lake Wyola Advisory Committee is asking to use some of it for the dam this year, but that is
Mm.
that's that $33,000 pot that I mentioned for the new fiscal year.
Okay.
And that money's has to be approved at town meeting.
Yeah, so the Historical Commission doesn't control that. That has to be a grant to the Community Preservation Committee, and then that committee recommends it to town meeting. And that's the problem that we're up against, is that town meeting is only in the spring, or if there's a special town meeting, probably in the winter sometime.
Yeah, and just yeah, so Aaron, or anybody else who's not aware, we do have about $19,000 in our permanent account. That's ours to do various things. Um, so okay,
Thank you.
so yeah, uh, I'll contact Smolsky about this stuff
Okay.
and get back to you. But in the meantime, I guess the question of whether it's historically, um, I guess I should. I've read and I've heard. I've attended workshops on this, but I don't recall exactly. It seems to me there's a fudge factor here. It- Given the circumstances, I think we may fit into that. If we are locked into the sloping roof. Do you follow?
What do you mean by fudge factor?
Yeah.
Well, by fudge factor, that there may be uh, 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 situations where being exactly historically accurate can be varied. in terms of materials, in terms of design, and that kind of thing. That's really what it boils down to here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in it can be helpful distinguish between a, you know, preservation or, you know, project or versus like a conservation project. Is our goal to conserve the signboard so that it lasts for another 150 years? Or is our goal to sort of, and it's a spectrum, you know, is it our goal to match a historical reference for a reason that we've determined is important to, you know, make
Yeah.
it look, yeah.
Yeah. And,
It's sort of from the conversation, it's sort of, I'm under the impression that people are more oriented toward conservation rather than,
well, we try to be. I mean, that's the whole point of it. But Massachusetts, I guess, preservation. I don't recall the full name. It's just, uh, they they have an opinion on how much variation there can be from, let's say, the original, and I want to revisit that.
I have a hard time deciding. I didn't realize what the no cupola, no flat roof looked like. I just didn't until we just saw that thing. And like you said, I haven't seen a picture that the guide board ever looked like that. It had the little tiny flat roof on the top, and then in what, the 70s or something, cupola was added.
That's
Um,
right.
it-
That's right.
It's not the end of the world as long as everyone else is okay with it too, in terms of the people in town who might be interested or whatever. I just don't know how to proceed if we just go with the cheapest one. I think having Steve Smolsky's input will be helpful in knowing what's best for the longevity of the structure.
Yep.
I think that this is a really important point that Janice raises, that like what we have apparently agreed to then is not a version of the guide board that has ever actually historically existed. But that was the premise of the argument that we made about choosing this, that it was returning it to that original roof configuration,
That's right.
not actually doing that.
Yeah.
And so in order to comply with the standards that Henry was describing, with the Secretary of the Interior standards that CPA requires, like maybe we need to maybe this cheapest option is not really an option at all. Our choice is either to go to the flat piece as it originally looked, and then we can talk about what to make that out of, shingles or rubber or copper, or to go with the cupola as it's looked since the 1970s, which, the standards, the Secretary of the Interior standards does say that most properties change over time. Those changes that have acquired historic significance in their own right shall be retained and preserved. So does the roof configuration as it appeared since the 1970s equate to something that has a historic significance in its own right?
Yeah.
In which case, do we go back to the cupola?
Yeah. And that, however, is $2,000 more than the cheapest. Yeah.
But if we have it in our funds, it's just a matter of
Oh yeah.
getting
Absolutely.
the feedback and then changing what we're asking for from CPC,
Yep.
waiting for a town meeting vote to get that approved. And if some of that involves additional monies from our fund, then maybe it's worth it. This is a big project for us and it's a very visible one.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, how many historic structures do we have in town? I mean, there's not a lot. There are a number and they're important, but we don't have a tremendous number. We should be caretaking the ones that we have to the best of our ability, maybe without, as Janice said, without being sort of too concerned about costs, knowing that that money does exist out there.
Yep.
But I think that, what Henry said about talking to Steve Smolsky about the long-term survival of the object given a roof piece like this is something we should probably know about.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm kind of
I mean,
surprised Williamstown didn't bring it up, but
yeah.
yeah.
So
I
it
mean,
sounds like there actually are some sort of like guidelines in the process for us
oh
that
yeah.
are set by the Secretary of the Interior about the goals we should meet in terms of matching a historical reference. Is that right?
if
Yes.
if we're using CPA funds, we have to follow the Secretary of the
Mhm.
Interior standards.
Okay. Okay.
But
I mean, personally, like I think if we're going to spend the money and it sounds like the money is available, we should try to have one that is at least in conversation with the historical references we've seen. It sort of
Mhm.
yep.
seems
And
like a
and
bummer to.
Yeah,
and the town is used to the cupola by now. I mean,
Yeah.
that's I mean, we in a sense we were kind of taking a risk. I mean, doing the flat roof.
except that we could show from 1911 and
I know,
earlier pictures
I know.
that had a flat roof originally.
I
Yeah,
mean, I should be, I'll be just totally frank with my view on this.
yeah.
Given what we know now about the costs for these things,
Yeah.
and given what we know about, like now seeing the drawing of what the
Yeah.
cheapest option looks like, my inclination would be, unless there is a reason to fear that it would harm the object long term because of heat or water or whatever,
Mhm.
would be to opt not for the cupola and not for the pitched roof, cheap option, but for the flat one.
Mhm.
Ideally with shingles, or I mean, I do wish we could tell in the photo what they used, but
Yeah.
Oh well, no.
Based on what I've seen too, I agree with Mateo. I think that that's been my sort of like, paying attention to the emails and looking at the pictures. That's what
Yeah.
I've thought too.
Well, the flat roof with the rubber, it's a rubber material that would sit there on the flat part of the roof.
I don't I would love to know from Williamstown why they wouldn't use shingling on the top of that
Shingling,
flat
yeah,
piece with a
yeah.
wooden trim around the
Mm.
Mhm.
vertical part.
Well, maybe Henry can find some. Steve Smolsky might have some ideas.
Yeah.
It might have
Yeah,
also just been an oversight. Like these proposals get put together. They're a business dealing with lots and lots of clients. Sometimes there's not there. If you ask for it, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's option E.
Mhm.
Here it is.
Yeah, I think where we kind of fumbled a bit was thinking perhaps that the price would be comparable to what we had imagined, and it turns out that the prices are higher. That's just the reality. No, I mean, would you agree? I mean,
Mhm.
we thought, oh, let's go back to the flat roof, thinking, well, it might be comparable to the price of the cheapest model because it seems to be less stuff going on.
Yeah.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
cheaper than a cupola.
yeah, yeah. I'm torn. I mean, I could see it go back with the cupola. I mean, that's what people are used to.
Mhm.
Um, and then the other option, I'd vote for that. I think as well, because of its historical significance. You know.
Yeah, I think I'm less inclined now that I've seen the draft, the sketch, to
Mhm.
do the one with no top little roof and no cupola. It's just like you said, we've never seen that in one of the photographs or anything of it. So
Yeah. At least the cupola existed at some point
yes,
from
yep,
the 1970s to the present,
yep,
and the flat piece existed before that, but
yep.
the other one has never existed at all until we created it.
Yep. So I heard from Mateo and Aaron, uh, preference for more of a flat roof. Yes.
I would first want to know from Small Ski about
Yeah.
the conservation impact of that.
Yeah.
Then I would also want to know from Williamstown whether we're locked into just rubber or copper, or if there's a possibility of just continuing the shingling onto
Exactly.
that piece.
Exactly. Yeah.
If there's a reason they wouldn't do that.
And Karen, do you have a well? You haven't seen these, but you can imagine. You can imagine. Um,
Henry, can you check with Karen? It sounded like she was trying to talk too.
can you hear Karen?
A
Okay.
little bit.
Okay, hold on. Hold on.
While he's getting her, I just always harp on the same thing. We don't know what it looked like in 1824 through 1910.
Yep.
That's true. Okay, Karen, you can speak now.
I can't hear anything.
You said putting roofing. Uh-huh. Well, no, yes. Yes, it is a four-sided roof. At some, yes, but the shingles, I guess they're cedar shingles. Well, this is what they're going to put on there, and they're recommended as a very viable and you know something that's going to last a while. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's what we're discussing, whether it should have a peak or not. Uh, yeah. No, Janice, what you want to wait and see on this?
What do,
I have
what,
to.
Well, in terms of preference for a flat roof or a double or a cupola.
I think
Well, no, the cupola is what's been on there since 1971, I believe. Yeah, yeah, right. Did you hear Karen at all?
almost not at all.
Oh my God. Okay, I don't know what else to do.
So you'll have to summarize.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, she was asking about the shingles
Yeah.
and whether it would be a four-sided roof, and yeah. Um, a, but flat roof or cupola. That's sort of those are the options that we're talking about. We should know more, and after I speak with Smolsky. Yeah, Karen's saying that rubber may not work out with the heat of the sun,
Mhm.
but yeah, we'll know more. I'm going to talk to an expert on that about that. Well, we should meet sometime in May. You know, maybe sometime mid to late May before town meeting. Yep. No, I believe it's the end of May.
Time
But-
meeting is May 31st.
Is it 31st?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Ah.
31st of May. So we have a bit of time to mull this over.
Henry, I can't hear Karen at all.
Yeah, you know, yeah, she's asking about what do you call it, the graveyard, the Quabbin, yeah, the Quabbin event.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we both Leslie, I believe Leslie and Janice attended. Yep. Yes, yes, we're aware of that, and we're mindful of that. Yeah. Um, well, we could talk about that now, actually. She's asking about attendance at that the upcoming event, the Quabbin event. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. It shouldn't take much longer to get through the rest of this.
Mhm.
Let's see. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna have Henry find out more information, Steve Smolsky, get some feedback about the rubber,
Mhm.
about the different options and whether one is better than another for the longevity of the guide board.
Yep.
Okay.
So I have an update on metal detector policy.
Okay.
And let me just share this with you quickly. You you've seen a version of this. Okay, where are you? Hmm. Ah, so this is something that I presented at the CONCOM meeting, the Conservation Commission meeting. Um, and I was there to inquire as to what their role might be in this, since it involves, metal detecting involves digging into the earth, and they were all ears, and yeah, uh, I guess offered a few suggestions to this.
Uh-huh.
It's just these just very brief bullet points that it might comprise this policy or set of rules.
Huh.
Um, the issue here again is the third item. Digging in town property is prohibited unless you have written permission from blank. With care and control of the property uh, must be obtained prior to conducting metal detecting. So this is something we would need to fill in. Who is going to be responsible for this? Um, um, who's going to give out the permission?
It's hard to answer that without knowing because they're town property. There are properties that are controlled by the select board, and then there are properties that are controlled by the Conservation Commission.
That's
Mm.
right. That was a distinction that was made during the meeting. They're in charge of certain areas. The town, is in charge of the common, things like that. Um, so I guess there would be respective authorities in charge of those places.
I would think so.
Yep.
I mean, could that language just say, unless you have written permission from the select board, the Conservation Commission, or the other town body responsible for control of that property?
Yep.
Something
Yep.
along those lines. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, but
Yeah. Could be. Yep.
just make it.
And I mentioned to them that this could be a part of a much broader policy regarding archaeological artifacts. Um, that we still have to elaborate.
Mhm.
Yeah, but this could certainly go up on the on the uh, on the website. I guess it would have to be approved by the select board. Um, and the only thing that's missing here would be anything that could be uh, a, included that's relevant from the State Historical Preservation Office.
Basically any state land, right?
Well, any guidelines that they might have
Okay,
along these lines. Yep. I mean, you have all the regulations and laws that are applicable, and
I actually think, Henry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I
yeah,
seem to recall that the state regulations about um, digging, about archaeological digging and metal detecting apply to all public lands, whether it's state or local. So we would have to say, that all of these relevant regulations, state regulations, are um, assumed in ours, the town policy as well.
it should be inclusive.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. All right, that's pretty much it. We had an interesting conversation.
good.
And Matteo was there as well.
Yeah, I think the only other thing that came up was a discussion about um, when people are metal detecting to identify property pins, if they are metal detecting and they are in a butter to a conservation area, they didn't, I think there was some concern from the commission that they didn't want people to feel like they couldn't do that kind of surveying detection to find a
Mhm.
pin. But if we address this proposal toward, or this policy towards, not just detecting but excavation as well, I think that kind of
Yeah,
pretty much solves that.
Well, that particular individual thought it was uh, too much to ask for them to get permission to do such things. Um,
Well,
my,
that's a state requirement that they give people
it
have to.
is, it is, isn't it? Okay. And I gather that not only the conservation commission, but also isn't there another board that oversees such things as well? Is it the planning board or the zoning board or?
no, not in terms of property management or whatever.
Okay,
Yeah, the planning board will only be involved if somebody who's trying to change the property line.
okay.
Hmm.
Any other thoughts on this?
No, maybe if you can do whatever editing you want to do based on this and then get it out to us and we can look it over
Yep.
and talk about it a little more, but sounds good.
Well, the way we left it with the Concom is that I would send them a version, a draft, and
Uh-huh,
and they would look it over and give feedback. So
okay.
that's where it stands.
But I think you need to make it clear, like Mateo was saying, that
Mhm.
there are certain mass historical, whatever, requirements for any kind of public land.
In the bullets here.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yep.
Whoever,
Yeah.
Yeah, and those state regulations are about excavation. They're not. I don't think that they're about metal detecting itself. They're if you start
Mhm.
digging stuff up,
yeah,
which I assume is what somebody's going to do when they're metal detecting. But
Right. Yep. And I suspect that that's what those laws down below uh, uh, deal with. No, just write it down here. Anyway, it's getting dark in here.
You're a black box like me now.
Oh boy.
Whoa.
There we go. Okay. All right. So I'll send this back around as soon as I get a response from the Concom.
Okay.
Annual report. We forgot to mention last time that we did submit an annual report.
Yeah.
It was long past the deadline. We didn't have a chance to share it with you, but yeah, we did ultimately, didn't we, Janice?
Yeah.
Janice was good enough to do it. So did everybody get a chance to look at it, or?
It was sent out before the last meeting.
Yep.
Yep, I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty straightforward, and yeah.
Janice, you wrote it?
Yeah. I followed Henry's basic design from the previous year format.
Yeah, you know,
Thank
they,
you for doing it.
yeah,
Good to me.
yeah, no, you know, they sent this out like December 31st. I don't know. I, never imagined receiving official mail on that date. So I was, yeah, I didn't realize that it had already been sent. The request had been sent.
So long ago. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I mean, December, yeah. Anyway, we'll know next year. They send those out early. All right. I believe that's the archival project.
Yeah.
Aaron, I don't know, and Leslie, any thoughts on what's happening with that?
It was really nice. Leslie met me last week so I could sort of get a better sense of what all is there. There's definitely some really there's a lot. So what I was able to see, and I don't know how long were we there, Leslie, like an hour
Yeah,
and a half?
easily, I bet, yeah.
Yeah,
It-
so
and
I dipped a toe in. The one thing I did, I think that we came to a couple of useful conclusions. One of which is that having sort of as a first step, sort of a sense of like a mission statement for the archive specifically would be a really useful starting point, because the Shutesbury Historical Commission's charge, which I did take a look at, it is useful in that it spells out some specifics as to what it is that we're supposed to preserve. But given that we have limited resources, limited space, and also that when the project does move forward, there's going to be some weeding that probably needs to happen. And that's something that Leslie suggested as well, or to me, that having a mission statement that says sort of like what we focus on is probably a good first step.
Okay.
Do we have
One other
examples?
question I have about it, which is secondary to that, is that in terms of like sort of thinking forward about people working with the stuff, there's definitely some health hazards in that space, like mouse poop, especially in like large quantities, which there is mouse poop in there, can be hazardous to health. Also mold And like, do we have any sort of does the town like insure to protect people if someone got sick from working in there? This is, I know this sounds insane and extreme, but it's a reality of working with old stuff that it can actually make you very sick. And I just wanted to know if it's like, oh yeah, the town's got an insurance policy and it covers people who do volunteer work, or yeah,
No.
I don't know.
I doubt it.
Okay.
No, we do. The town, if you're an appointed official, there is both indemnity, someone can't sue you because they don't like what you did. And uh, I'm pretty certain there is. We could ask the new town administrator, but she probably doesn't know what the policy says right away.
Yeah.
We're transitioning at the same time, Aaron, in our town administration from someone who was there for almost 2 decades to 2 new people who are just learning everything from scratch. So there have been
But I think
people,
in it's something I just sort of was like wanted to ask
Right.
about in a sort of
There-
general way, but I think the mission statement is more relevant to this group in the short term.
there was one town clerk who wouldn't go in there without a mask, a really
I wouldn't want to go back in there without a mask, to be honest. I
and
just think
there today for an hour and cleaned up some mouse left behinds and set some mouse.
yeah.
It's all a matter of a personal level of what your body can tolerate. But I would say this town would say, don't go in if you don't feel comfortable there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, yeah, having sort of like worked in, if let me put it this way, if you were working for an institution and they were like, you need to go and pick up that stuff, the institution would require you to wear PPE when you're dealing with it. Just because it's a health hazard for many people, and it's not a big deal. That's totally normal. This isn't like throwing shade on stuff. Like there's mouse poop, it's okay, but also it can make you ill.
Aaron, in your consideration or in your view, do the environmental conditions in there present a risk for the materials?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I would say, not from, again, what I saw from like a little toe dip, on the one hand, it's like, what kind of risk are we thinking about for something that's like a Xerox, right? Like there's a lot of Xerox material. Are we upset that a mouse ate some Xerox sheets of paper? I'm not really sure. And maybe we are, I don't know.
I'm not.
Photographs are definitely in like very real danger of being harmed over continual exposure to temperature shifts and also to the rodents.
And we haven't had much damage from rodents I can't think of any damage ever to photographs. They're all pretty well taken care of. The only place that I've ever seen damage was in the box. Excuse me. We had a cardboard box that had some letters and ledgers in it. And when we dug down, we saw where a mouse had been. I pulled that box out today and I was going to bring it even home and clean it out and get the documents into Mylar sleeves. But I walked
But still,
out.
for photographs, like, take this with a big grain of salt. In an institutional collection, you would be keeping any kind of photographic material certainly at a consistent temperature and humidity, and in general, it would be cold. Photographs do not do well with fluctuation. So even just like the seasonal, it's 80 degrees in the summer, it's -5 in the winter. you know, that fluctuation is going to like crack photographic surfaces, especially albumin prints, which is a really common print you know, like type of print that I saw, you know, a bunch of those in there. It's not great. They're still legible. It's just, you know, photographs start to curl, then they're hard to store. It's just, it's not ideal in many respects. Just the environment, even not the even aside from the rodent situation.
I wouldn't disagree with you one bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that building has been up for renovation, I believe, but the cost has been exorbitant, is my understanding.
Yeah, there in 2019 there was a CPA grant for $34,000 to do a renovation, which the buildings committee has withdrawn, because they plan on applying again at some other point in the future. But 34,000 is not nearly enough
No,
for what it needs. That's why
no.
they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, even just from my like eyeballing the place for an hour and a half, it's like I could, yeah, that's a big, really big project. I mean, the build and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful space, and it's amazing that that closet has been able to accommodate the accumulation of so many things. But you know, the sort of the sense that I have overall of what role the historical commission can play at this moment is really in terms of defining what kinds of things we're interested in acquiring. And this is, you know, you know, collection development policy is sort of the norm for any kind of, not just institution. You know, when I was talking to Leslie, the way I often describe it is like it's like gutters in the bowling alley. You know, we don't need to bowl a strike every time, but like the gutters and like a policy can just help you. The bumpers kind of act, the policy acts as a bumper so that you don't wind up going off on some tangent and spending a lot of time and energy and resources on something that actually isn't really in alignment with what you're trying to do anyway. So having those policy documents as like a sort of a founding thing so that when you start to get into the weeds figuring something out can be really helpful. And you know, I'd be happy to try to put one together. It wouldn't be too hard to get started. Where it's going to be tricky is to say things like, do we acquire materials related documenting family histories in Shutesbury? There's lots of reasons why someone might say like, yes, we should, you know, all of my letters could, as a Shutesbury resident, could go in the Shutesbury Historical Commission because it documents my life, and as a Shutesbury resident, like that's something we care about. I I have opinions about about things like that, but like, you know, that's the kind of thing you want to sort of make some decisions about so that you don't end up biting off more than you can chew.
I would also add to that, I don't disagree at all with Erin, and I appreciate her comments. The policy statement, the specifics that I would like to see honed in are accession and deaccession, because we both commented on things that, are they that valuable? And then it becomes a matter of who makes those decisions. Do you bring everything to the commission to see if they fulfill the policy? Because people have over the years donated things, and it used to be less of a space problem when the whole main room was mostly available for storage, and now we're confined to the closet. So it's a bigger issue than it used to be, and it needs a definition, because exactly as the bowling alley analogy is, how do you decide? And the point is too, she was questioning a it started as a trunk full of papers that was given to the commission concerning one individual in our town who was a poet and a artist. I didn't show you all the stuff. And she, to me, even though she was she wasn't self-promoting at all. She was very humble, but it just so happened that we came across her belongings through a third party. I think she represents something about this community that is important. So even though, yes, she, you know, if the artist down the street who maybe may or may not make it in 2025 wanted all of their possessions preserved by the town, we might say thank you, but no thanks. This is a woman who lived a long time ago, and there were fewer families, and hers was very representative. So even the policy has got to have bumpers that could be crossed. And another thought that another principle is many communities have a historical commission that deals with regulatory things, deals with the kinds of things that you folks are all handling beautifully. And I always am grateful for all that you're doing with the guide board and various things. And then they have societies that might pick up these things, it's these other things, such as Lydia Johnson's family's ledgers and her poetry and her sketches and that sort of thing. But we don't at present have a society. Many people have said to me over the years, we should have one. And I say, yes, we should, if you got the time and money. And that's where it ends. So the commission is doing more than really what is expected of a commission. I'm done. Sorry.
Appreciate all of the input here. I'm just wondering, backtracking a little bit, if there's anything that could be done to you know, as a more immediate kind of measure to deal with any, well, for instance, the mouse droppings, or the, you know, I don't know if that's, you know, we could
Well,
hire somebody to go in and clean it up. I don't know.
there was one box, I say, and I set some traps today, and I meant to bring the box home here, and because you don't want to bring it over to the new town hall, I was just going to bring it home and on a day work outside and brush off the pages. And
I mean, we have volunteered. Some of us have volunteered to clean up. Well, we cleaned up the schoolhouse, for example. That's had mice in it, so it might be this might be an occasion to do another volunteer effort to go through the place and, you know, clean out.
I think that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm wondering about is like, you know, that closet is just so small and it's really jammed. So and also that it's like that it is we yeah. To what I'm wondering, especially with something like mice, right? We've all dealt with mice. Where there's one, there's more than one. We could go in and clean things out, but like without sort of emptying everything out of that room, I'm not sure if it's actually going to, you know, I think what Leslie has done in terms of like cleaning that one box, setting some traps, you know, maybe doing that regularly is a good idea, and just like maybe doing some mouse checks, but there's just so much stuff in there.
I don't have time to do that. And I think handling it this way till we get an accession policy and a de-accession policy. Make some more general decisions. The schoolhouse, we could move around and there was only a few items there compared to the
Yeah.
closet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, just on a personal note, I actually got rid of mice. I haven't had a mouse in 15 years.
Good for you. How'd you do that?
Well, the trick is really to seal any potential entries.
Yeah,
And
but then we're starting to talk about the building renovation,
yes,
right?
well,
Yeah.
yes and no. I mean, in my case, it was not a huge operation. I did it with a friend, and we just went around the perimeter, especially where the roof hits the walls on the corners. They like to nest there and find any spot that's bigger than, I don't know, a quarter of an inch, and seal it up. I mean, we could try that. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, Leslie.
Um, Not specifically. I think your building was built a lot more recently than 1829
Yes, ma'am.
structure.
We did it by getting 2 cats, so we could always just keep 2 historical commission cats in the.
There you go. The thing of it is, I hate to say this, but because because a lot of the file drawers are jammed, I don't think the mice can really get in there. And it is that we don't heat it very much in the winter. And I appreciate what Erin's saying about the photos longevity being compromised, but that's what the building we were given to work with. We had a nice big closet at the town hall, but there's other active boards that needed the space. And we got moved out of town hall about 20 years ago, and we're making do with what we've got.
I just want to, on that topic, the Spear Library building.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
So it's going to be available. I know that there's at least one other department that is eyeing it.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to have at least a somewhat climate controlled building.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. And after all, it is part of our legacy here.
Something, yeah, I agree with you. And I keep saying to people that it is our first library building, our Spear Memorial Library. I'm wondering if we could, if we had our history library there, if we could still call it an annex of the, we could still call it the Spear Library. And I don't know what the naming plan is for the new one, so I've got the cart before the horse, but it would be nice if even just a corner of it maybe had a history shelf so that it could be maintained as it's the first library.
Spear Library Special Collections.
There you go. You've got it, Mateo.
Well, how does one go about doing that?
I don't know.
Who do we talk to?
I think it's too soon. Excuse me.
I imagine it's going to be up to the buildings committee and the select board to decide how to, how they're going to end up not disposing, but making use of that building. But I know that the police department is interested in it.
Well, yeah, they could use something better than that for the more tuned into their specialty needs too. I think it's a political
water
that is been on the books for, since well before 2010, 2012, when the first,
I think this is a great idea. And I think it's a great idea to think about, like, getting a better space and all that. I do also, and I feel like a little bit of the, like, sort of Debbie Downer, but I also just want to say there is so much stuff in there. And moving it to a new space means that we're making a particular kind of commitment to maintaining what's there, going through it, and at least at this point, like I still am sort of uncertain about like what our labor model is, what kind of resources like we might have to actually, compensate someone to do it. Cause I think it is a many hours of work to sort of go through things, make it discoverable, even in like just on the basic inventory that was recommended by the traveling archives program. And as a first step to that, having a collection development policy that includes accession and deaccession guidelines for donors. If you want to Google like the Smith College Special Collections collection development strategy, that gives you a good idea of like the kind of thing you write, where it's just like, this is what we collect, this is what we do not collect. If you want to give us something, here are some things to think about, so that we can also, like, if we think about moving something, we can take the opportunity of moving things to then be able to make strategic decisions about, holy cow, this box is filled with like a mouse family. Is this so important to us that we actually want to deal with it? Or does this even fall out of the scope of what we actually said we've collected? Because I think, as Leslie pointed out to me when we were there, that there's a lot of stuff that we will want to deaccession because it actually isn't relevant to what the commission wants to focus on. So I kind of, like I want to sort of bring us maybe a little bit back to home base as to what step 1 is before we start getting to step like 3, 5, 7, 100.
Which is focus at this point. Focus. What is the focus going to be there?
Focus is going to be setting up a policy
Yeah,
that includes accession and deaccession. And I think it'll be much harder to define what is important because our town was so small and so varied. Many institutions might specialize in a certain thing, but we don't want to miss out on how the roads developed. We don't want to miss out on how the government developed. We don't want to miss out on how farm families and lumbering development developed. I'm trying to figure out what that general. We don't want to miss out on how Quabbin impacted us. So it's just so varied. I'm wondering if you've got an idea for us, Erin, about how to tame my brain.
I mean, in the first place, I would just start by looking at the mission statement of the Historical Commission. And it says that we preserve and protect tangible evidence of the architectural, aesthetic, cultural, economic, archaeological, political, and social history of Shutesbury. That's very broad. So I think that there needs to be some narrowness from that might also really relate to the kinds of physical objects we collect, right? Like, you can sort of approach this by saying, what subject areas are we focused on? What topics do we not want to miss? Sort of as Leslie was just describing. You can also say, we collect photographs, maps, letters, ledgers, or none of those things, with a focus on the material types. Because then also you can start setting some parameters. I like approaching it that way because then you can start setting some parameters around what you don't collect. That makes sense. Like, can we acquire things, and can we actually deal with things that are really large?
No.
Like, building plans for a non-government building, right? Somebody's like, my farm, I found all of these, architectural drawings of my farm. Will the Historical Commission take them? You know, you can set sort of, you can define what you will take on the basis of what you can actually sort of accommodate, which even though we could potentially accommodate larger things in the future, you know, you have to sort of plan for what you can accommodate now. And I think, you know, other things too, it's like, do we collect printed books? Do we collect, reproductions, or do we only collect originals, like actual historical artifacts, or do we collect, like, are we supposed, you know, the mission of the historical commission could sort of be interpreted as we're a research center for the study of Shutesbury, which we obviously can't be, right?
Oh, I'm not sure we can't. I think that's our biggest mission, is to educate our residents about our community history. And a lot of those photocopies are just that. They're
Well, it doesn't say that anywhere in the mission statement, though. It says that we preserve. It doesn't say that we educate. Those are two very different things.
I understand. But I'm just saying, in reality, that's what people want to know. So, and maybe it has to be changed, or maybe I would just, you know, I've got a little sign in there that says anything that the commission decides, when I was off the commission totally. Anything the commission decides they don't want, please just let me know first, and I can take it to my house and figure out what to do with it, because I get questions all the time. Last week, someone wanted to know about the town farm.
Huh.
And so many little specifics that, and a lot of them are photocopies that I'd taken out of town records over the years, town meeting votes, photos, various things, when it opened, when it closed, inventories in some years, letters from the state. The person was very much pleased with the work that I was able to provide, and most of it was photocopies, but I don't know how that fits into the mission statement. And that's why I say maybe this is where commission and society part ways.
Yeah, I don't know much about the plot of land that my house is on. But I
And
guess,
you'd probably ask me sometime, and I'd say, oh, okay, this is
Yeah.
what I have and know about this.
Mhm.
And that's what people ask me frequently, you know, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if we just start from the mission statement, because that's what we have, right? Like, that's what we're authorized by the government of the town to do. Am I correct about that?
I'm
Like, if
not
we want to
sure.
do something else, we have to have the town authorize us to do some other different thing. I'm asking for clarification from those of you who understand the town better, government better than I do.
Just to be clear, our mandate from the state is that we have license to pursue, you know, whatever direction we like. I'm not sure. In other words, that was my reading of the mandate. I can send you a copy of that just so you have it.
Is that like, I think I'm seeing it linked
Yeah,
on the
uh,
historical commission.
it gives quite, broad
It's
license.
broad.
Very-
Okay.
Yeah, in other words, and we can contract people. We have that kind of autonomy. Um, um, in other words, we can initiate various criteria for what you know we deem historically worthy of preservation, or
Right, but that's different
yeah.
than having a mission of we protect and preserve records and make them available for researchers and community gatherings. those are different things.
Mhm.
Because they require different resources, they require different sort of approaches to dealing with it, and they're two different sort of commitments, right? Like one is saying we are devoting our energy and our resources to like a protection and a preservation, and like what we're doing with the guide board, versus we gather things up and we make them accessible, and it's the end we make them accessible part that's actually it's just key in sort of understanding in shaping our thinking about what we're doing with this stuff. Because if our goal is to make it accessible, then we really need to be like tackling that in a thoughtful way.
I think I could speak for most folks on the
No.
commission that this is a profound interest that we all share. That is to reach out to educate people about
Great. That helps me a lot to understand, what our goals are. But and then, again, that can be part of a policy, right?
perhaps we could.
Like this is our goal. We collect items for this purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
There was silence there. I assume that's agreement.
Yeah,
I was only going to add in this whole conversation that when we talk about records, anything that is municipal record voted at a town meeting, all of that sort of thing is the town clerk's responsibility. And those are going to be preserved. The commission has just become kind of a repository where people have donated things. We've been asked to provide programs. We've been asked to both outside and inside. I'm thinking most recently that uniquely Quabbin thing, not most recently necessarily, but a few years back, there was a goal of the region around Quabbin, the north region of Quabbin, to create a periodical, and it all got kicked off with presentations of the histories of each town. So it's not just Henry wants to know what was on his land before he was. It's broader than that. And people want to know about Quabbin and how Quabbin has impacted our town. So we happen to have a resident in town who was the director of the visitors center, and he provided us with everything that he could find relative to Shutesbury and Quabbin in their files. So yeah, they're not originals, but it's certainly significant for our town to have them. And I do share them widely too with people. About 2 weeks ago, I went on a hike with the map club of the Swift River Valley Historical Society down at Gate 15. They hadn't ever focused on the Shutesbury part before, and we talked a lot about maps, and we had them because the gentleman who worked at the Quabbin Visitor Center had given us all of that material digitally, and it was available. So I'm just rambling, but I'm just trying to give you folks some idea of the kinds of things that are going on. I could give you a report each month. Sometimes I think maybe I should give a report on what I've done for people in the previous month, but I kind of haven't kept a list.
That sounds good. And it kind of confirms in my mind that the point that Aaron is making here, that the more clearly we have, the better the focus here as far as the kinds of materials that we're interested in, then we can expect then to reach out to, or there could be efforts to reach out to people or make known that we are a repository for those kinds of things, and those kinds of things will come.
Or also, and because I also really want to caution us against saying to people that we're a repository for something at this point. Because
Okay.
at this point, we are also a repository for mice and their descendants and their feces. Like, I don't personally feel comfortable telling anyone to give their stuff to us to keep in that room. We have no infrastructure for maintaining it. We have no infrastructure for like really making it accessible or keeping track of the fact that we have it. Like, these are the kinds of things that as someone who does this for a living, like I have to think about the kinds of commitments that not only that you make to someone when you say, yes, we will keep this, right? And something I also, something I think I'm thinking about in terms of this is that the stuff that Leslie has acquired that are photocopies or that people have given her scans of and that she is directing people toward, there's a lot of material that is being collected by other institutions and is made accessible by other organizations, and those organizations are making commitments that they can meet to preserve and make that stuff accessible as well. And so something that might be a little bit more of like us biting off what we can chew rather than becoming like the research center for Shutesbury, which is a really great and admirable goal, but maybe not feasible for a committee with a $30,000 budget that like doesn't, as far as I understand, like necessarily renew every year. Like no one has time to make the inventory. Like maybe a more, in addition to sort of like approaching things and saying, here's what we do collect, coming up with a policy of what we can acquire and what we can sort of commit to caring for with integrity, that we could also say, we are developing a research guide for Shutesbury. So we can say, if you're researching the Quabbin and how it's affected our town, like you should go to this place, and this place. These files at these institutions are going to be really helpful to you, so that rather than being the purveyor and preserver of all of this information, we can be a touch point so that people know where to go to places that are actually like, collecting those originals and making them accessible. Because one thing that we don't need to do is like, collect copies of the New York Times, right? Like I'm using a stupid example, but we don't need we don't have the resources, nor do we need to duplicate the efforts of other institutions. And so sort of thinking of things that are like, what can we actually do as a group that meets our goals of, and it sounds like the goals are collect stuff and also educate people about the town, is that like, some sort of less resource intensive, like here is the starting point, let's be a launch pad rather than a research center, maybe seems a bit more realistic.
I appreciate what you're saying very much. And it's very true. We don't want to collect the New York Times. What I've been doing is saying, okay, here's the pictures of the houses that were in Quabbin. For an example, here's the pictures that were the houses in the Quabbin. Here's our town report that shows the highway department spent this much amount of money on Enfield Road in Shutesbury. Enfield Road doesn't exist anymore. People really like to, and here's what they paid for taxes. Here's a picture of the house in Shutesbury from the Quabbin. Here's the road. Here's what people paid for taxes over the years. It's kind of a blending of the two. So it's all, we're spending a lot of time on philosophical questions. I think we're all on the same page. We've got a small space. We need to do our best to make things available to the public, which is why we're talking about an inventory in the first place. And yes, it's overwhelming to
Oh.
think of itemizing each item, each thing that we've got.
Yeah, I just want to remind you that I think our time may be running out. I don't know if it just cuts out automatically or not. Does anybody know?
I think it keeps going unless somebody else is scheduled to take it, but
Mhm.
still, we've
We're-
had a nice conversation here. I think I've learned a lot from Aaron and it's given me a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
broken. It's broken the ice here just to see and
Good.
we can follow up. Some
Yeah.
things to think about. Yeah, as dialogue should be.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. Any unanticipated business? Having none, shall we adjourn? I move to adjourn. Do I hear a second? Oh, Karen says she seconded it.
Ha.
Yes? All right. So going around. Zivonka, you heard that.
Yep.
Good. Geddes, I. Pangalo,
Aye.
McGirl.
Hi.
Okay. Stone.
I,
All right. Thank you all.
thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
discussions.
I'll be. Oh, next meeting. Where might I send out a poll?
Okay.
I'll send it out. Is there a preference, days of the week? At this point, I mean,
Not Thursdays because I have meetings on
you
Thursday.
work. Yeah, you have. Yeah, but could it be Wednesday at all, or
Yeah.
yeah?
Well,
Um,
Mateo was saying something.
Mondays and Wednesdays are not good for me.
not good
Okay.
for you. Yeah. Okay.
Next
Yeah.
couple of months, next 2 months.
Yeah. And Mondays? No, not a great day.
He said no Monday, Wednesday.
Yeah,
All right.
Mondays and Wednesdays are not good for me.
All right. No, I will. Pick a date then Tuesday. And we should probably meet before the town meeting, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So mid May or so.
Yeah.
Mid-May, maybe. All right then.
Okay.
We'll be in touch.
Okay, good. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks all.
Bye bye, all. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.